questions. And there we go. Let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders. I'm your host, Mark Oppenheim. Today, our discussion focuses on organizations with a deep understanding of how the human-animal bond can improve our physical, social, and emotional lives, particularly in therapeutic settings. With special guests today, Dr. Edward Placke, Executive Director of Green Chimneys, which is based in New York State, Annie Peters, President and CEO of Pet Partners in Bellevue, Washington, and Amy Blossom, CEO of Eagala, the Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association in Elgin, Illinois. So thank you all for coming. And a reminder, Zoom attendees will take 3 snap polls during the show. We'll announce results. And your questions submitted to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen will be included in our discussion. It's wonderful to see you all. This is really an important and growing field. And coming out of the isolation that was engendered by COVID, you're seeing people needing some sort of a connection. And very often that connection can come through animals, our pets. We see an explosion in puppies and families with puppies coming out of that kind of isolation. So let me set you up, and I'm going to go to you, Ed. Animals and humans have interactions at the beginning of time, and those interactions can have a huge impact. There are situations where humans experiencing trauma or having mental health issues or physical issues or dealing with aging just need that kind of nonverbal connection, and that sort of unconditional connection that humans can have with animals on both sides can be incredibly healing. So Ed, let's sort of get oriented on your organization, Green Chimneys, your physical plant, and the services that you provide. We're going to go around the room. We're going to go to Annie and then Amy, and then let's talk about some of the more complicated aspects of providing these services. Ed?
Great, Mark, and thank you for this opportunity. Certainly, it is a really incredibly important topic. Just to give you a little bit of background in regard to Green Chimneys, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary in October, and we have 2 schools on 700 acres. We have a 200-acre farm as well as a 500-acre forest that has a large lake. And the focus of Green Chimneys is working with youngsters primarily on the spectrum and those that have significant mental health issues. And Green Chimneys is the last stop for most of these children. It's K through 12th grade. We have regents and local diplomas, so we are a state certified school. We have 102 youngsters who live with us and 150 commuters. And all of these children have a variety of disabilities, but all under the umbrella of mental health. And the beauty of this program that was started in 1947, our founder, Dr. Ross, who has been involved with both organizations that are here way back in the 60s and 70s, is that the DNA of our youngsters are missing that nature-based piece. So his focus was animals and gardening, as well as outdoor activities. I mean, I'm really pleased that our youngsters are absolutely involved in the daily life and care of over 300 different types of animals. It could be our 22 equines. We have 3 camels. We have herds of sheep, goat, cows. We have probably one of the biggest birds of prey rehab center in the country. We rehab about 100 owls, primarily bald eagles, falcons, vultures. That's something that the kids are involved in. So again, we do provide that animal type of therapy with our occupational therapists, our speech and language therapists, psychologists, social workers, but it's way more than that. That's only a slight piece of it. Every child has a job or has responsibility to care for an animal or part of our garden. So even though
we should come back, Ed, and talk about the sophisticated nature of providing services that keep animals healthy. There are planning, there are executive function skills, there are financial skills, there are volume. You know, how do you calculate the volume of feed? You have medical care because animals need to get shots, right? That whole piece, it just connects to our lives in really fundamental ways. Annie, could you talk a little bit about Pet Partners? Then we're going to come back to Ed, and we're going to go through, we're going to deconstruct the competencies that are required and the competencies that are conveyed through your various programs. Annie?
Sure, great. It's great to be here, Mark, and nice to be here with these colleagues who share Pet Partners' commitment to both client safety and the highest standards to protect the animals that are engaged in these opportunities. So Pet Partners is the leading therapy animal organization. We registered 9 species, although primarily our therapy animal teams consist of a handler and a dog. We have the highest commitment to client safety and animal standards, concern about the animal's welfare, and that they also seem to benefit from the interactions as well. So we have 10,000 teams in the US and 13 countries.
10,000
10,000
teams.
10,000 teams. So you and your pet are a team. And those teams make visits to hospitals, assisted living, reading programs in schools, college de-stress events, hospice, anywhere where people in a vulnerable position might be away from their pet, away from an animal, or benefit from a visit by an animal. So I tell people, if you have a well-behaved golden retriever and you want to start visiting sick children at Children's Hospital, you would come to Pet Partners. We would educate you, evaluate you and your pet to make sure you're a good team. If you pass, then we register you and insure you. So that's for lay people, right? People who want to share their pet. There's also this huge growth in professionals who want to integrate an animal into their practice. Think psychologists, school counselors, occupational therapists, even dentists. Many people go to their dentist's office now, and there's a dog roaming around. And those professionals have not had anywhere to go for their education. They've come to Pet Partners because our education is the highest in the space of therapy animal visitation, but everything we do is for volunteers. So 2 months ago, Pet Partners launched a sister organization, a professional membership association called AAAIP, the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals. We also have the first truly certification exam in the space for professionals who want to integrate an animal into their practice. So you can become a certified AAI specialist by sitting for this remote proctored exam.
That's wonderful. So we'll come back and we'll talk. We're going to unpack quite a bit there as well. Amy, could you, before we do that, could we have an orientation on Eagala?
Sure. So Eagala is an international nonprofit that trains and certifies mental health professionals and equine specialists to offer equine assisted psychotherapy or learning experiences. We set standards, we provide education, and we provide ongoing support for our members. We have about 2,500 members worldwide. We have members in every state in the United States and about 47 countries outside of the US right now we have membership in, or we have members who reside in and work out of. We have 750 programs worldwide right now actively offering the services. So I'm really excited to be here as well with all of you. So thanks for the opportunity to share.
So you function as kind of an information clearinghouse, a training center, a methods and approaches kind of organization to help your members. And you also function as a community, right?
Yes. So Eagala specifically trains and educates professionals who want to offer equine assisted psychotherapy or equine assisted learning services. So Eagala as an entity does not provide services outside of the training experiences. We have a fundamentals training, which is a 5-day experience. There's some pre-work and post-work for people to do as part of the certification program. And then ongoing continuing education that's required to ensure that all of our members are up to date with new and upcoming information that's relevant to the field. Then we have advanced certification and other kinds of trainings as well to offer.
Let's talk about the nature of nonprofits and why the structure of nonprofits, the approach of nonprofits enables these types of very valuable services to exist, right? If we had to think about profit at the end of a quarter, none of you would actually be able to sustain, right? I mean, your benefit is not necessarily a financial benefit to investors. It's changing people's lives. And that's sort of where you focus. You have to keep things financially stable. How do you create that balance where your financial stability, Ed, is guaranteed so you can continue your mission, but your resources, your thinking is dedicated to the welfare of young people and the animals that are in your care.
Yeah. And Mark, we have a very unusual situation. We have a $44 million budget, and 95% of it is funded by the New York State Education Department. And our founder was very wise and very creative to hook school with HAI, human animal interaction. So we have to raise $2 to $3 million per year to break even. And that's
do you ensure that the people who benefit from your services come from all different walks of life, all different income levels, all different conditions? How do you do that?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is we have the biggest research project in the country regarding HI at the University of Denver. It's a $500,000 project. And we're really looking at how does interacting with animals in nature affect their ability to regulate themselves, because most of our kids are highly dysregulated. And we're about 4 years into the project and seeing really good data. So that's something that's been really helpful when we're marketing our program, showing the data that there is a significant impact on the lives of our children. So again, and most funders are looking for data. And we also have a big vocational program as well. We know every child is not going to be a farmer or work on a ranch, but we're teaching those soft skills, being on time, dressing for success, following directions. All of that really is helpful when we're out in the community sharing our story.
And dysregulation covers a whole bunch of different things, right? Executive function skills, time management,
Yes.
regulation, impulse control, those kinds of things that, even getting up and making your bed and making sure that your room is clean and doesn't devolve into utter chaos, which makes a life chaotic. So you're actually transforming, you're providing a route to being a functional adult, aren't you?
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I just want to mention, we're not a boarding school. So the goal is to develop those skills and go back to your home school district, go back to live in your community. It's not about spending 10 to 12 years at Green Chimneys. The average stay is 2 to 3 years. So it may be a bad business model, but it's a really good educational model to get kids out as quickly as we can. And the family is the key here, Mark. We work closely with the family with a lot of training programs in regard to that transition back to their home and their community.
And I love that point about it may be a bad business model, but the real question this begs is what is the business of business, right? Because nonprofits are businesses. You operate in a very sophisticated way, right, Annie? I mean, you have to really manage your money very tightly. You have to think about the competencies that attach to each person that is part of your team. You have to integrate the team. You have volunteers. You have people coming and going all the time. You have different revenue streams. What is the business of business in America? What should that be? And I'm talking about not only the nonprofit sector, but really the business sector. Should we be thinking about good all the time, every day in our lives?
Well, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on what the business sector should be doing. If I were, I might not be here today. But I just know for me personally, I can't imagine waking up every morning and my goal being to put more money in somebody else's pocket. I mean, that just wouldn't get me excited about getting out of bed, and it certainly wouldn't drive the team that we've assembled at Pet Partners to do the work we do. I think the secret sauce in a nonprofit organization is what passionate volunteers will do, how much they'll contribute, what they'll give you of their time and their resources. I mean, if we had to pay those 10,000 volunteers on an hourly rate to go share their pets and share their animals with people in need, we probably couldn't raise enough money to do that. But these people are just passionate about, they know they have a special animal. They know that their animal can make a difference, and they're passionate about getting out there and finding the right fit for them and their pet so that they can make a difference in somebody else's lives. And you add up those 10,000 teams making visits every week, week in and week out, you're talking about over 3 million visits a year. And that comes from volunteers who aren't expecting anything in return other than going home at night with their pet, knowing that they made a difference in their community.
So, I think it's really ironic. I'm going to disagree with you because I'm going to bet that you do think every day about putting money in people's pockets. And I think that the people's pockets you're putting money in are employees and the people who are serving your purpose. The thing that I think is interesting about these civil society organizations is that they do require leaders who have a very high degree of business competence. So Amy, and I'm sure this will be reflected in Ed's team and Annie's team, what kind of competencies are part of your team so that you can advance your mission, right? Because if you're getting up in the morning thinking about social good, but also about ensuring that people get their salaries and their paychecks and that they are retained and that they're happy, which is what every business leader thinks about, what kind of competencies do you have to retain in an engaged and positive way at Eagala?
It's a great question. We really need people with high levels of integrity, people who are willing to do what it takes to work toward our global vision to ensure that people around the world have access to Eagala model services, to be able to limit conflicts of interest, potential perceived conflicts of interest, because a lot of us have our own businesses on the side as well, that we have to put Eagala first. Our mission and our vision have to come first all the time so that we can collectively move forward our mission and our vision. And that's something that our programs in Eagala have to afford to utilize a barn and rent horses or pay for the horses that they work with. So part of our support is helping our members learn how to, whether they're for profit or nonprofit, how to fund their programs so they can continue to provide services. And so for that reason,
you're providing a kind of business counseling as well, aren't you?
Definitely a lot of business counseling in our work and a lot of support for our members. So that's a little bit different than some of the other nonprofit models. We're providing training and education and support so that they can find resources to support their programs.
So you're functioning as a bit of an intermediary. Let's talk a little bit about from Green Chimneys' perspective and Pet Partners' perspective, because you're direct services organizations. What kind of transformation are you trying to engender? Ed talked a little bit about this before, so we're going to go to you, Annie. When you look at the two organizations that you described, right, the direct services side of people going with their pets to try and have an impact on somebody else, but also the professional association, how do you measure whether you are actually doing what you intend, that you're having the impact that you intend? And then I'd like to then go to you, because you have also, right, a whole broad array of individuals with different needs, accountability to ensure that you're staying on target and that your investments are actually having the intended impact. It's a really tricky business. Annie, could you comment first on those two organizations that you described?
Sure. I would say, so we have direct and indirect goals, right? We do fund research. So we're the serious therapy animal organization. We're very much interested in the research about why this seems to work. And that while there's more research every year, it's still a very minimal amount. And there's a lot left to be done too in validating one person's research and showing that somebody else can get the same outcomes. So although the field's been around for a long time, Ed mentioned that as well, it's very childlike still in its infancy in regards to what we really know about the science as to why all of this works.
So
we also have some indirect.
That's kind of, is there a little bit of an attitude in society that's kind of quaint, it's about pets and so on and so forth? We work with a number of different organizations, including organizations like Canine Companions for Independence and so on. And there can be kind of a ignorance on our part, on my part, of the sophistication that this engenders. And it isn't just sort of a quaint kind of a thing. It actually is a very hard-nosed business that is about delivering specific benefit, right?
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. It seems like a pretty simple premise, right? Take your pet to a hospital and visit somebody who's not feeling well. But it's actually quite complicated in terms of zoonosis, making sure there's no disease transmission, safety for the client, making sure that the animal's welfare is, tended to as well. So I'd say in addition to sort of those direct results of how a visit feels, how does it make the client feel? If anything, I think we tend to overascribe sort of the magic that we believe happens in some of these situations. The anecdotes are amazing. You know, a child waking up from a coma because a dog, you know, got up in her face in a hospital bed. A child who had been abused, who wouldn't talk about the abuse to the therapist until they shared that the dog that he was visiting with had also been abused. And he reached out, stroked the dog's fur, and said, "It's okay, Belle and I was hurt too." And then that was the first the child opened up and started talking. So there's a balance, right? There's a balance between the stories, the anecdotes, but also the research to really figure out where this goes as a field. We also have indirect goals as well, though. And Amy, we were talking about this in the green room before we came on screen. You know, there's a lot of well-intended people who are anxious to step into this space, but there's a lot that we don't know. And the idea of protecting the client and protecting the animals, looking out for the animals' welfare is absolutely paramount. And we've got to come together as an industry and make sure we're championing the same thing and the same standards so we can all move forward safely and collectively.
And then how do you deal with accountability? That, you know, in the mental health field, accountability is so difficult, right? Trying to figure out how you're having the impact and optimal impact, because if you have 100 clients, there are 100 differences, right? Each person is so individual. How do you deal with this? Is it kind of a group getting together and from different perspectives and discussing options and then deciding, or are there metrics? How does it work over at Green Chimneys?
Yeah, you know, the beauty of it is every child who steps on campus has an individual education plan, also known as an IEP, where they have individual goals, objectives, various resources they need to access, various therapies. So we look at those goals and we utilize our animals in many cases and gardens to achieve those goals. And we have quarterly updates. So there is a great deal of accountability. In fact, school districts pay almost $300,000 per year to come to Green Chimneys. And most of those dollars are refundable via the state government, but it's a huge investment. So the school districts and the families hold us accountable. So it's all on that document. Every child has their own roadmap in regard to outcomes. And then at the end of the year, we review it for the fourth time and decide, is the kid ready to go back to the home environment? Is the kid ready to do a step down, maybe from residential to a day program? Can they go back to their public school, or do they graduate? So the accountability is built in, which I'm very comfortable with.
How does it work in your environment? Because it would be very easy for a young person who has had a particular experience that is associated with their situation to look at going to Green Chimneys as a kind of punishment, right? It's fundamentally different. How do you deal with the intake process, and how do you ensure that the entree to your environment?
Well, again, prior to COVID, we were about as competitive as Harvard or Yale. We had about 1,200 applications for about 30 to 40 positions. So that worked. That's kind of slowed down now, but based on COVID. I've never met a child who's excited about coming to a residential program, quite frankly. So it's a process. We work closely with the family. We work with the school district. We do tours. We do an orientation. And most kids are still not happy. But the good news is once they get on campus, they have a favorite animal. It could be a bald eagle. It could be a camel. It could be a Clydesdale, again, whatever it might be. So
that's interesting. You're using the human animal interaction to set the tone. You're
Absolutely.
Not doing it with words. You're not just alone sitting in a room and explaining stuff.
Yep. Agreed. I mean, we had kids embrace our mini horses, as I said, the Clydesdales, Percherons, I mean, whatever they're interested in, but the horses are a big piece, as the dogs and our birds of prey. The camels, we have 3 gorgeous camels, we have Bacterians. So yeah, that's a piece of the lore to come to Green Chimneys. You're going to get your favorite animal or animals.
Are we connecting in some way with something that we've left behind as we modernize, the nonverbal aspect of ourselves as animals, of ourselves as beings? Amy, do you think that this is part of the magic that we cannot recapture with another verbally oriented entity where we're going to communicate through speech or through sign, but instead, and it's not structured, it's very emotional. Is that part of the magic here?
I think so. I believe that the horses, again, Eagala works specifically with horses. So the horses have a unique way of meeting every client where they're at. And whatever it is that that particular client needs, somehow the horses fill that space. And you're just seeing which horses end up showing up next to different clients and how they interact. And many of the clients that come to an Eagala program have been through talk therapy, and it hasn't worked for different reasons. And there's just something special about working with the horses. The horses don't need them to talk about it. They need them to be present. They need them to be authentic. And that takes time to shift into that, into learning to be authentic and learning to be present. But once they can, the horses give automatic feedback non-verbally. So I believe that nonverbal piece is huge.
So we're coming to the end of our time. I just want to point out a couple of things. I'm going to give Ed a word, and Annie, I'd love you to give the last word on the new organization that you're founding and how that might be scaled to impact the entire sector. But I did want to mention that most people have had experience with service animals or support animals at some point. And the second question was, what do you see as the most important benefits of animal-assisted interactions? And we required people to select 3. And what was interesting is that we had like a multi-way tie. Communication between the individual and patient and staff and provided, increases self-esteem and brightens individual's mood, diverts attention away from pain and discomfort, decreases stress and patients and clients being served, empowers individuals in environments where they might otherwise feel little control. It's a very, very broad set of benefits. It's not just one thing, which is really interesting. So Ed, could you just give us a sense of where you feel this sector in Green Chimneys in particular is going into the future, and how we might want to change our perspectives of human-animal interactions in a way that could benefit both sides?
Well, again, the good news is we're planning for the next 75 years, and our tortoise is the only one who's probably going to benefit from the next 75 years. But we have an institute here, and part of it is training and passing the good word to others. Prior to COVID, we get hundreds of agencies and individuals come in and observe. And again, to me, it's not necessarily magical. It's hard work. You got to be focused. And again, there are groups we're encouraging to embrace this particular model locally, nationally, and internationally. So we think we have a good model. I mean, it doesn't work for every child, obviously, but we believe our DNA, nature's been ripped out of our DNA. And this is a way to pour it back in. And for kids with mental health issues, it's really, I believe, central to their education, both socially, emotionally, and academically.
And your point is that we all, in that respect, live with mental health challenges. And we all need to reconnect with our natural world and the other beings that live in that. Isn't that part of your point?
Amen.
Yeah, I got it. Andy, could you take us out with sort of an explanation of how you intend to affect the entire field through this association that you've described to us?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. The work of Green Chimneys is incredibly well respected in this space. And the work that Amy does in terms of, interacting with horses has been around for a lot longer and much more mature. But the idea now that you might be able to find, if you're looking for a therapist or you're looking for an occupational therapist, and you might be able to find someone who specializes in animal-assisted therapy and you might be able to book an appointment based on the possible availability of an animal being integrated into your treatment plan would be appealing to a lot of people who don't qualify for these other services. And that's the future. That's where professionals are headed, whether they're passion people coming out of school with a social work degree and they want to understand how could they integrate an animal into their practice. So that's why we launched the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals, to make it safe and doable and viable for all of us to have more exposure to pets at a time when we might need them and benefit from them the most.
And now with these new technologies like Zoom and this interaction that we can take, we can build communities, we can transmit knowledge, we can then come together at physical facilities as well. So you're taking advantage of how we communicate today in order to create coalescence around this issue and knowledge around this issue. Dr. Ed Placke, Executive Director of Green Chimneys, based in New York State; Annie Peters, President CEO of Pet Partners in Bellevue, Washington; and Amy Blossom, CEO of Eagala, the Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association based in Elgin, Illinois. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. It's been a fascinating discussion that bridges so many different worlds. We so appreciate your help. And then on Thursday, we're also going to be talking about empowering AAPI youth, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander youth. These are all parts of what you're working on from a particular angle. It's so interesting how these topics interconnect, and we're hoping to see you all there soon. Thank you so much for attendees. Thank your boards, thank your staffs, thank your donors, thank the government entities that are helping to support your programs, and we'll see you on Thursday. Have a great day.
Thank you.